Welcome to episode 2.
Episode 2 of the Video Game Book Club. This month, yes, we are reading, or we read, I guess, already, Uncharted, The Lost Labyrinth by Christopher Golden.
It's the 4th Labyrinth.
Shoot! Why did I write The Lost Labyrinth?
Because it is technically The Lost Labyrinth.
It's the Lost 4th Labyrinth. I'm so sorry,
thought there were
Christopher. 3. Uncharted, the 4th Labyrinth. I don't know why I wrote that on my notes. It's super weird.
Because that's what they're looking for, lost. A Lost Labyrinth.
The 4th one is lost, so there's that. What is the basic synopsis of this book? Or I guess the back cover.
Yeah, okay.
Synopsis.
So, again, Uncharted, the 4th Labyrinth. Nathan Drake, treasure hunter and risk taker, has been called to New York City by the man who taught him everything about the, quote, antiquities acquisition business. I believe that is in quotes because they are a bunch of thieves. Victor Sullivan needs Drake's help. Sully's old friend, a world-famous archaeologist, has just been found murdered in Manhattan. Dodging assassins, Drake, Sully, and the dead man's daughter, Jada, I'm so sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this, Hazujak, race from New York to underground excavations. Wow, I can read. In Egypt and Greece. Their goal to unravel the ancient myth of alchemy, look for 3 long-lost labyrinths, and find the astonishing discovery that got Jada's father killed.
Spoilers.
It appears that a 4th labyrinth was built in another land and another culture, and within it lies the key to unmatched wealth and power. An army of terrifying lost warrior gods. They were kind of terrifying.
Yeah, they sounded terrifying.
They crawl on walls. This underground maze, so does a monster that lies beyond. If Drake can live long enough to reach it, of course he does. So spoilers, it's Uncharted. He's gonna live. Is both a treasure and a poison, a paradise and a hell.
I hate when they do that stuff where they're like, it's a prequel, and they're like, is the main character going to die?
Dun dun dun.
And you're like, no. I know they're not. This is a prequel, and they're in the next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess it's good to point out that this is, in fact, a prequel to all the games.
Mm-hmm.
They don't mention pretty much any of the other characters that are like Charlie and characters that have been through multiple games are not mentioned in here. So
just Drake and Sully.
And some guy named Massimo, who, if you guys know who Massimo is, we would like to know.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. He comes in later, I guess. So, in your opinion, is it harder to write a tie-in novel, or do you think it's easier because there's like already established characters and you kind of like know how it goes, or is it harder because you don't have like free range?
So that's kind of an interesting and difficult question, because your characters are already developed for you, but at the same time, if you mess it up, more people are mad at you because they have their own views on what the character is, and that's kind of with this book in particular. I'm so sorry, Christopher, but he did a great job with kind of the feeling of Uncharted, but he missed a lot of the banter, I feel like, that the characters have, Sully and Nathan in particular. I was missing a lot of that humor. Of course, that could have just been Nolan North, because he's the voice actor who does the voice for Nathan Drake. But it was kind of missing some of Nathan's.
Would you be like excited to do a tie-in novel, like if Naughty Dog came to you?
I think I'd be terrified, just because there is such a just disclosure.
You can't please everyone, you know.
Like Uncharted is my jam, and I play the games yearly, and so there is a huge fan base behind it, and
would you decline, or would you?
Oh, heck no! That would be so fun. Just because I love the characters, but it would just be terrifying, and
I think it would be easier because you already got the lore and the characters established and like the tone, and then you get the name recognition.
That is true.
Your book
There's
will sell.
already an established base behind that. And I think it would be easier, like the last book club when we read the Mass Effect book, that world is so developed that.
Well, that was written by like the guy who wrote the games.
Yeah, but all of the environment and the characters, and to pull from all of that, uh, you could go anywhere with it in space. For Uncharted, you can go in any of the historical lore, which is what Uncharted does. It takes a historical character, place, and then they just kind of run with it. So that is a little bit more limiting, but yeah, it'd be fun, but also terrifying.
Yeah, I can see how it would be hard, but I don't know. Do you like this book? Would you recommend it to someone who has played the game versus someone who has not played it?
So the review that I have on Goodreads was a little bit of Uncharted is better than none Uncharted.
I see.
So it was fun, and I think if you go into it as like a lighthearted like adventure novel, then it would be a good book. If you go into it expecting an Uncharted game, you're going to be disappointed, just because Uncharted games
gets kind of gamey near the end.
It does. But for the diehard fans that know all the lore and know all the relationships and all of that, it misses it just a little bit. I think, though, it would be a good introduction to an Uncharted, the Uncharted world.
Would you say you should read this before you play the Uncharted games? Because it's a
prequel that came later, but it's a good introduction. I don't think you have to read it in order to understand what's going on, but
I think it would be a better novel if you just read it without knowing anything about Uncharted.
Yeah,
I think so too. I think,
especially
before you play the games, you should read the book.
Yeah, because the relationship between Sully and Nate changed quite a bit throughout, especially the first novel, the first game, but to not have that knowledge when you read this book, I think makes it a little better.
Well, because this came later, they obviously don't reference this book like at all in the games, but I didn't like it, but keep in mind, I'm not a big fan of Nathan Drake. I don't like roguish type men, and my favorite Uncharted was Legacy with Chloe and Nadine because I liked them better. But the front art of this book is super cool.
It is, and I like looking at it again after I had read it. Like, there's so many hidden images that are in here that make so much more sense. Like, you have the flowers and then the skull.
Yeah, you're right.
With the maze in the background.
Looks really cool.
Yes, it is. It is an excellent cover. Whoever did the cover work.
Nathan. It's pretty.
Let's see if we can. The cover designed by Phil Balsman. Cover illustrator was John Foster. Great job, guys.
Normally, I'm like, why would somebody who didn't play the games buy the video game novel, you know? And I was like, maybe the cover art is interesting, because I see a lot of reviews on Goodreads that are like, I've never played a video game in my life, but I decided to read the Halo novels, and they were supreme. And I'm like, why did you decide to read the Halo novels if you didn't...
their Grey Poupon and drinking their tea?
Like the games. I don't know why anyone...
Some people, like, video games is very much an investment. Like, it's a lot of your time, and...
You just want the experience.
They just want the story, and they don't want to actually play.
Uncharted, so I read the book.
It is a lot of the background lore. So I think for us, because we collect a lot of, we're collectors in the games, and we read the stuff that we find, so we get a lot of that backstory and all the extra work that those fantastic writers put into video games. We're just like a story within a story within a story. We actually read those things where a lot of people don't. So
I always want to play the series like from the beginning, because I feel like when you play the later ones, you miss so many references, and it makes it so much better.
Which we've done. Like, we did not start off with Mass Effect 1, and we had to do some background knowledge.
But we couldn't play it because we were playing on console.
Yeah. But now it's available for multiple platforms.
Remastered.
So what? So go back to your not liking Nathan Drake. So we've had several conversations looking at the art. Nathan Drake is very nice to look at.
The type of dude. He is nice to look at. I never liked the Han Solo types. You know what I mean? I never liked them. I always thought they were like, they'd be the type that would cheat on you. I don't like that.
But so as Nathan leaves people behind, he always comes back. So he does have that kind of quality with him where he is going to steal your stuff, but then he'll probably return it later.
Maybe. He'll turn some of it. That's what I hate. They like leave and you're like, wow, what a jerk. And then they come back and you're like, oh, all is forgiven.
And then they do it again.
Then they do it again and you don't learn your lesson. Don't date those men. I mean, look at... Oh, that's a spoiler for the game. Never mind. It doesn't matter. I don't want to spoil the game just in case you're like, I want to read the books before I play the games, because that'd just be rude. Why are books so much more gory and rated M than the games they're based on?
This one in particular, too, because especially... Uncharted 1 is for older consoles. You could definitely, when you play the remaster, you can tell. Especially the platform game that it's on as well. But so games back then were not as gory because there was a stricter rating system, I feel like, than there is now.
Like after Mortal Kombat.
Yes, when you're pulling someone's spine out of their body. But this was a lot more,
just like the Mass Effect book. These are like really intense, and I was like, an Uncharted game would never go this far. So this is
not really a spoiler since we find out that the archaeologist is dead, but the way that they find the body is not very Uncharted.
Not very Uncharted.
So Uncharted is like, you've got zombies and creatures and people die.
Skeletons.
But not
mostly by like gunshot.
Yeah, not in little pieces, and that's a little bit extreme.
Fall down a hole. Like that's Uncharted.
Yeah, that is buried under sand,
Yeah.
So it was gory.
I don't know why books do that. I guess they don't expect maybe they expect younger people to play games more than
that, and it's probably easier to write gore than create it. I don't know.
All right. Well, we're going to go into spoilers. We're going to tell you about the whole...
We're going to go through the entire book.
I have 4 parts for the 4 labyrinths. Not really. It's more like 3 labyrinths and 1 intro.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so if you want to read this book...
pause here and then come back to us after you have read it.
Pretty much anywhere.
No.
It's pretty easy to get. And... All right.
They're leaving it now.
So, I have part 1. We start off with Nate being chased by South American drug lords. Very Uncharted.
Where is this location?
I have actually no idea. I just know it's drug lords, and he also saved this girl. Is it? Where is it? This is where I wrote notes. Tropical something? Ecuador?
Yeah, so for the Uncharted games, typically each game except for The Last Legacy.
Where did The Last Legacy take place?
India.
Oh, yeah.
But most Uncharted games have at least 3 locations, and that's pretty standard for Uncharted. Like, you will go to 3 locations.
This one technically had 4 locations?
This one is a little all over the place because it's like, oh, well, Nathan Drake, we know, is usually in some tropical area, except for in the 3rd game, they're in the desert. But
they try to open it very Uncharted.
Yes, where it's like action pack, and we're just gonna throw you in there.
He's in like a car chase. He got a staff from a drug lord, and then the drug lord didn't pay him, so then the locals paid him to go get it back. So he did, and on the way he saw like a girl that was kidnapped, so he took her. And okay, one thing about Nathan Drake, I wrote this down. Ew, what the fuck, Nathan? There's this line here that says, okay. He glanced at her wide eyes and her pretty mouth and her soft skin, the color of cinnamon, and decided he didn't like cinnamon. It ruined a good piece of toast as far as he was concerned.
Cinnamon sugar on toast is delicious.
Toast is ruined by cinnamon. What are you on about, Nathan? And you should never say pretty mouth. Never say that.
There's a little...
That's kind of like saying...
You sure do got a pretty mouth.
You sure do got big hands. You know what I mean? Anyway. Yeah, that was like page 1. I was like, oof.
It does. The book does get better. So if you are reading it and you're like
Ew, who is
turned
this?
off by people who don't like cinnamon on their toast, keep reading because it does get better as it goes on.
Yeah, so car chase ends. They try to give up, and then the natives attack, and then he gives the staff back, and he gets a bunch of money for returning the staff and also returning the girl. Um, and that's all that is about that portion because he immediately gets a call from Sully when he's in the airport, and Sully's like, "Hey, come to New York. I need help."
Which any of the settings around the world, the last place that I would ever see Nathan Drake is in New York City. Like, he's not
It's not a
usually
city boy.
unless the city's on fire and being destroyed
Well, that might come into play later.
in other countries. That's definitely Nathan Drake because he is a little bit of a disaster. But yeah, I don't. He's not typically, besides the time that we see him like at home in the fourth grade. We don't really see fourth game. We don't really see him in the United States
like
that much.
in a suburban house. So
Yeah.
Sully's friend Luca's body has been found dismembered in a briefcase on the subway.
Yeah, so subway landing, there's a suitcase and it's just left there. And it has a body inside of it. That's
just the head and the torso.
Yeah.
So
I don't think they ever find the rest of it, do they?
No, they never do.
That is
Spoilers.
Yeah.
I don't know why they were like they're sending a message. I don't know if they are though.
That message was never received. So...
Yeah, I didn't receive the message.
Yeah.
Apparently
he was doing some sort of research, and it was like, stop that research.
Yeah, he was hired by Phoenix Innovations, which is a weapons manufacturer, so they're evil. And he works on a private project, something about labyrinths, but Luca got scared and quit, but he still worked on it secretly.
So the information about this we get from the daughter, right?
Yeah, so no one has a lead, and Sully's like, I have a lead. It's his daughter, Jada, who is also Sully's goddaughter, because I guess they were that close.
Sully's got a lot of friends, though. Like,
I guess it makes
I'm sure
sense.
he's got several goddaughters.
Maybe. I hope not.
He's not quite the moral character you want to help raise your kids. That's what godparents are for.
It's like never gonna be around. Jada thinks that her stepmom and Luca's wife, Olivia, sold Luca out. That's her theory.
And she sticks to that theory like for the longest time. She's like, evil stepmother.
Evil stepmother must be my evil stepmother. They find a book about labyrinths that Luca was looking into, and they go and try to talk to the author at a nearby museum.
Yeah, like a costume. Not like, hey, I like your book, dude.
Yeah, they are at the museum. Drake thinks the museum intern is hot. That's what I wrote. He's very, very thirsty in this game, in this book. He hits on, flirts with.
Comments on, I think.
Comments on in his brain.
Yeah, internal dialogue.
Sometimes I don't want to hear the internal dialogue. I think that ruined it for me a little bit. Perfectly good toast. Come on. So the intern takes them through the labyrinth exhibit to go see the author guy, and then they hear a scream, and Drake runs towards the scream, and he finds the author bleeding out on the floor.
And they leave him there.
They do, because he's a lost cause. That dude's definitely dead. As we said in the book.
Medical help, hey, no, they're just
and Jada run to go find the killer, but are unsuccessful. Yeah. And they just left that guy to just die in a pool of his own blood. He was alive, but he was a lost cause, according to him.
Yeah.
So then, since the author's dead, they're like, so intern, what do you know? And she is distraught, but says that they found out that there's a connection between a labyrinth in Egypt and a labyrinth with a minotaur. The classic.
So that is the minotaur. That's the
we
Cretan.
Theseus and the minotaur?
Yes.
I was in that play.
Yeah. So historical. I don't know. Do we want to do historical background now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So there is the legend of the minotaur in the labyrinth in Crete, and what the legend is that the queen, the reason why it's called minotaur is that the king, his name is Minos, and so his wife had a sexy time with a bull, and
ew.
I know, and then has a half bull, half human child. It is kind of like negative propaganda that Greece started about Crete because Crete was like the place. They had like indoor plumbing.
Pretty sick.
Minos was like the king. Their cities were like mazes. So there is some um, truth behind the myth, but there is no
There's
half.
no minotaurs,
There is no minotaur.
but in this book, they say that they're
Yeah,
real.
and so Theseus is the one that he shows up, and then the daughter has the string, and that's how he gets back out through the Minotaur, the maze after he defeats the Minotaur. But the person that creates the maze that the Minotaur is in, so obviously she has a baby. It's half bull, half human. Ooh, gross. And it's a monster. So they have to hide it because they can't just kill it because it's her baby.
Okay.
So
Didn't stop many ancient people before.
that is true. And they sacrifice people to the Minotaur too, so it's weird. It's like a curse
just
from the
think it's
gods, so you can't make the gods mad. But so Daedalus is a architect. He has a son named Icarus, which is where the second story comes from. But so Daedalus creates a maze that the Minotaur then is put into. The other part of that story is poor Daedalus created the maze. There's only one way out, and he knows about it. So they lock him in the maze. Him and his son, who's his son Icarus, helped him create it. And so uh, Daedalus is kind of like a badass when it comes to architecture. If you've ever played Immortal Phoenix Rising, like he is a big part of that, and that video game is all about Greek mythology as well. But he creates wax wings, and him and his son get to fly out of the maze. But Icarus, being like a teenager who doesn't listen to his dad, like flies too close to the sun, and then his wings melt, and he plummets to Earth and dies. So there's kind of multiple parts to this myth with Theseus and the Minotaur and all that. But there is this secret maze. There is some archaeological evidence that comes to this, not about the half bull, half human thing. Crete, actually, they did worship bulls because the island of Crete is Zeus's island. And Zeus turned himself into a bull to go kidnap and rape some women because it's Zeus. Zeus. But Crete is the island where Zeus's mom went to hide him when his dad tried to eat him. So Crete is the island of Zeus, which is again why bulls are super important to the island, and this is all the mythology and stuff behind it.
What is it? Daedalus?
Daedalus.
Daedalus. They throw a lot of shade at him later on in this book. They're like, Daedalus is a swindler. He built these labyrinths as like a trick to get money.
Mm-hmm. So there are the kind of the thing about this book is that he's built multiple mazes. He's like a traveling maze maker. He made it for the Minotaur. He made it in Egypt, and so they see similar designs in mazes that they find in other countries, and they're like, oh, of course, it's his like MO. It has to be Daedalus. So
that's the connection they find between all of them. So they decide to go to Egypt first. When they leave the museum, they try going back to Luca's apartment, but the building is on fire.
Naturally.
So they grab a taxi, but then they get shot at by a sniper.
Which, if you're a taxi driver, like, you're not. Are you continuing that fare?
I don't know, but they told him to move and he didn't, and then the sniper killed the taxi driver. So Nate has to drive, and a black SUV is now like tailing them. A car chase ensues. They manage to escape and they steal a boat.
Sounds about every like Uncharted game, like boat, steal a car, be shot at.
But they left a note when they left the boat, and they were like, "Sorry, just a joyride." So it's okay. It's not. Except is it grand theft if it's a boat still?
Because it's over a certain amount, probably, unless it was a little dinghy. But
it's like a luxury boat.
Yeah, that's definitely grand theft.
So Jada calls her stepmom, Olivia, and Olivia's assistant picks up, and she tells Jada that Olivia is in Egypt. Ooh. So the group gets fake IDs, and they get on a cargo plane to Egypt.
So fake IDs, not because they're minors, but because someone is obviously tracking their travels, so
Mhm.
they don't want to be on the radar of someone up
Of somebody.
high that's gonna be able to check passport information.
Yeah. Part 2 is Egypt, and it is long. I think it's the longest Labyrinth section, to be honest. I would say so.
It's kind of like an introduction to the labyrinth,
Hmm.
and there's some important,
We get a lot more information.
yeah, and it's also good character development for Jada because we don't really know her.
Not really. Other than, no, she's sassy and wants to find her dad. That's her personality. So in Egypt, they get guns and they try to stay in the same room as Luca did when he was there, because he was there just like a couple weeks ago. But it's being refurbished. They manage to get in anyway, and they find a note in a fan in the room with the number 271 written on it. It's another hotel room. So they bribe the desk clerk and they get a key to room 271. And in the AC unit of 271, they find a journal that says, "If found, give to my daughter Jada." Basically.
Why didn't he just mail it?
Because they would have taken it, or he was
Not.
paranoid.
Who's looking in the AC unit?
There was like a note that said something about. Oh no, he called Jada and he was like, "The fan's really loud here in Egypt." So she's like, "Maybe there's something in the fan," and there was. Given hints. The journal is full of labyrinth pictures. It says, "Talk to Welsh, who is the intern from the museum's brother." Connections, who is working on the dig site here in Egypt. So they set up a meeting with him. Welsh says they found that that there is a third unidentified labyrinth. Before there's a fourth unidentified labyrinth, there's a third.
Yeah, that's kind of it's like, ooh, there's a mysterious third labyrinth, but you know that there's going to be a fourth one because that's literally the title of the book.
Luca thought that there was 4. It says so in the notebook, yeah. And Welsh is like, I'm not buying it. There's no way there's 4 labyrinths. That's crazy. They also bring up Honey and the Mistress of the Labyrinth, which was written in the journal. And Welsh was like, wait, hold up. We found tablets that said they would bring offerings to the Mistress of the Labyrinth, but I don't know what honey is. I don't know. Maybe it's gold or something.
Well, so in Egyptian culture, we're in Egypt, so there's a mistress of the labyrinth. So in Crete, and that everyone knows the Minotaur story. They're like, there's a monster in that labyrinth. It's the Minotaur. So this is labyrinth. There has to be something in the middle. It's the mistress. She might be like some sort of Nile god. Maybe she's a crocodile. I don't know. But honey in Egyptian culture was important. They used it as part of their mummification, and they used it. It's antibacterial, like raw honey is. So like when you get cuts and stuff, they would put honey.
It makes sense as an offering. Yeah. It's sweet. It's nice. Nice. It's pretty awesome.
And it takes a long time for those bees to make. So.
That's true. Welsh leaves the meeting. It's at a restaurant, by the way. I don't know if that matters, but Olivia, Jade's stepmom, walks in and is like, "OMG, Jada, I'm so glad you're okay." And she explains that she took off for Egypt because she feared her own life, this is Olivia, and wanted to figure out what happened herself. Jada is pissed and storms out of the restaurant.
She's super rude to Olivia.
Yeah, well, you know, her stepmom just kind of didn't call her when...
Yeah, that's true.
When the thing... I don't blame her. Nate's like, "I think your stepmom's fine," and then storms off to go after Jada as she leaves. And then there's men with guns trying to kidnap Jada outside the restaurant.
Should have chosen another restaurant.
Nate and Sully get into a shootout with the men. One of the men put a gun to Jada's head and is like, "Nathan Drake and Victor Sullivan, stop or I will shoot." And they're like, "Oh, how do we know our names?" So they stop shooting, and then a figure in a cloak comes out from the shadows and slices the dude's throat that was holding the gun to Jada's
Super
head.
Ninja.
Super Ninja.
That's what I called them like the whole time I was reading it. It's the Super Ninjas!
I didn't know what to call them. I just called them the cloak figures. I was like, assassins, cloaked dudes, I don't know.
Super Ninjas.
Then a bunch of dudes in cloaks come out, or super ninjas, and take out all the other guys.
Like in the shadows, too. It's like... You don't really see them.
Of the street.
Yeah.
One cloaked dude tells Jada something, and then they all dip out. And I never found out what she told. I don't actually.
I think it was like a warning, like, don't. They warned them a couple times. They're like, stop searching.
Yeah, probably something like that. I don't actually remember. Jada, Nate, and Sully, and then I guess Olivia need to leave before the cops come.
Well, like everyone needs to leave after a shootout. Why are people still there?
They always have to avoid the cops. The next day, there's no news about the shootout, which is strange. They go and see Welsh at the dig site, and the dig got a new sponsor last night. It's Phoenix Innovations.
Dun dun dun.
No. And Hendrickson, the CEO, is there at the site with the lady in charge of the dig. I wrote her name down, but she's actually not important, so I'm not even going to say her name. Welsh is going to show the labyrinth before Hendrickson. Before Hendrickson can see it. They're like, Welsh is on team Jada and Nate and Sully.
Heck
so
yeah.
he's like, I'm
He's
going
on
to show
Team
you.
Luca.
I'm going to show you it before they get to see it. So they go
Like
down.
literally like right before though.
Yeah, no, it's...
And it's a labyrinth, which I kind of took as like an Egyptian like pyramid thing where it takes forever.
There's like a bunch of traps in it too and
Yeah.
stuff. So I don't know. Maybe Hendrickson was just
so
really
they're like
slow.
30 seconds before. They're not that far ahead.
They meet an archaeologist named Melissa, and she's in this room that's like an altar with 3 octagon shapes for the 3 labyrinths. They also find a tablet that says that honey was given to the mistress of the labyrinth, and she gave the honey to the labyrinth's protector, which is a minotaur. It's like a painting and a tablet on the wall. They find a stone with an octagon symbol on it, and they put it in the altar, and boom, secret door. They go through, and there's a huge skeleton in there. And also an altar that was written in Greek and not Egyptian.
Connections.
There's 2 rooms. There's one for Sobek, and there's one for Dionysus, and there's another one for Poseidon. And in the Poseidon room, they find a jar that tells them that the 3rd labyrinth is on a Greek island.
So, Sobek is an Egyptian god.
Yeah, they had like half Egyptian, half
yeah, so
Greek
it was
god rooms.
like they were trying to combine cultures and basically say like, hey, look, these cultures influenced each other, which is kind of backwards because Egyptian culture was around way before Greek culture. So
Just trying to be friends.
probably the other way around. But yeah, but I mean, it was interesting that they tried to say, oh look, we all worship
friends. The same. Human sacrifices.
Everyone did human sacrifice.
It's fine. It's normal. Normalize human sacrifice.
But quite literally, every early culture did some sort of human sacrifice. So we are all connected in weird ways.
I don't want to be connected like that. Cloaked man. There's more cloaked men. They show up and they rush Sully. They shoot them. More cloaked men show up. There's so many of them.
And they're like, there's only one way in here. Like, how do these
I don't know
people
where they're
come in
coming from. My question is, why were they outside? I don't know why. More about the cloaked men later, because they're a problem in themselves. But so they got to get the hell out. Sully tells Nate and Jada to make a run for it, and the 2 of them run into Melissa, the archaeologist, and Olivia, the stepmom. They're hanging out. Hendrickson also shows up. And they're like, Welsh was taken by the cloaked men, by the way. That's kind of important later.
Yeah, so he is the archaeologist that's at the dig site that let him in. So
he's down there with
stole
them.
the archaeologist.
They stole their archaeologist, and Hendrickson, Melissa, and Olivia were like, I don't believe you. I was like, well, where do you know where Welsh is then? They're like, no, but I just don't believe you.
And they're also like, hey, there's a minotaur skeleton down there.
They tell them what they found.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
I think if there was a minotaur skeleton, like, you'd be like, hey, let's go see that.
So then they go to Greece. That's our next destination. I put this as the most Uncharted part of the whole book. Greece and the next place is the most Uncharted part. It's Sully finds a new journal while they're in the new info in the journal. He was just reading it. They're in like a hotel. So they go to a fortress that was
because we all know
built...
Nathan Drake can't read. So.
No, he can't read.
So
he just draws.
Victor Sullivan is the one that does all the reading.
He wasn't even looking at the journal, probably. They go to a fortress that was built after an earthquake, but it was unsafe, and so they closed it. So they break in, and the ceiling starts to cave in. Oh no, what? It's unsafe. They manage to escape and they find a sea cave with cave paintings of a woman offering honey to a minotaur. Connections.
Mm-hmm. Is this where they have
Um,
all the flower stuff too?
Not yet.
Okay.
So Scully then gets pistol whipped by Hendrickson. Oh my god, Hendrickson's here. Hendrickson brought goons with him too. Very Uncharted.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm
They
big
trusted
CEO man with
the
mercs.
man who owns a weapons company.
They didn't trust him though. They didn't
Yeah.
like him. And still, they still get pistol whipped. And then he brought mercs with him. Classic. Classic rich
classic
boy.
Hendrickson.
Classic Uncharted villain.
Yes.
Literally
game 1 and 2 and 3.
And yeah. Jada points her gun at Hendrickson. She does not care about the mercs. And then out of the shadows comes Olivia. This time long. Hendrickson is like, let's be partners. And they're like, no, let's, ew, I don't want to be partners with you. And then more cloaked men show up. Oh no, there's cloaked men here.
Super ninja.
And then the cloaked men take Sully. Oh no, they drag him away. Now we lost Sully. Jada and Nate find an altar and they do the same thing when they put the octagon thing on it. And they open another secret door to this labyrinth. They see a drawing on the altar that confirms if there are 4 labyrinths.
It's the secret piece that Luca knew all along,
Yeah.
but was never there.
He never went to Greece, so
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense, but that's okay. They realize the 4th labyrinth is in China. I don't remember how they figured that out, but
I think there was like Chinese writing.
there's
or...
like something
yeah,
like
because
that.
one of the tablets has like Chinese writing.
Yeah.
Because of
Hendrickson
course they can read it.
and
Yeah.
Olivia are here. Oh, I think Olivia can read Chinese. And they're like, now they're squad mates. They're squatting up. They're like, no, we'll never team up. And then they team up immediately after that. The hooded men are now using explosives to try to like smoke them out of the building. And like the floor collapses and underneath the floor is water. So they decide to swim out of that labyrinth. And that's all that happens in Greece.
Grace was very short.
It was very short. Now we move to China, which is also a very Uncharted part. The final section, China, the 4th labyrinth. They're on a plane to China. I don't know, the pilot's dead. His throat was cut. The
First
co-pilot.
the taxi cab driver, and now the pilot.
Rip for professionals. The co-pilot is one of the hoodmen, or at least has one of their knives. I wasn't 100% on that.
Because he's not in his hooded cloak.
He's not in a hooded cloak, but he's in a
his
trance.
Professional dress.
And the co-pilot then slits his own throat. So now Drake has to fly the plane and make an emergency landing. Nate then calls one of Sully's girlfriends. She's like from Oxford or something, and is like, hey, I need help. Is there any like underground stuff in this part of China? And she was like, yeah, go to the mausoleum of the first emperor of the Ming dynasty. Do you want to know the fun song I learned how to remember all the Chinese dynasties?
I've heard it before, but
my world history class was just China history, and my teacher really wanted us to know the dynasties.
He did eventually move to China.
He did move to China. He loved it so much. So it was Shang Zhou Qin Han, Shang Zhou Qin Han, Sui Tang Sung, Ya Ming Jing Republic. Ya Ming Jing Republic. Is it Mao Zedong, Xing Xiaoping, I believe?
Yeah.
And that's the dynasties.
There we
if
go.
you ever want to know them, I know them by heart.
That's what happens when you learn things to music.
It was so not useful for the AP history exam. They did not ask me what was all the dynasties.
Well, now
order.
that you're reading Uncharted, you now know when the Ming Dynasty was.
It was later than I would expect. So they broke into the mausoleum of the first emperor of the Ming dynasty. I can't tell you who that is though, so I am sorry to my professor. I let him down. They broke in, they do the octagon thing again. Hendrickson brought some mercs with him, so you know this is gonna go well. They find basically a torture chamber with paintings showing a hooded lady giving honey to slaves. The torture thing is weird. They like said that they built the labyrinth to represent hell or something like that.
Yes. Which is kind of a, I feel like it's kind of a ripoff of like Latin American, like Central America. I shouldn't say Latin America. Central American culture, because that is kind of the their representation of the afterlife. Of course, you also have in Greek mythology their underworld, heaven and hell is both underground.
Whoa, spoilers for life.
Sorry.
Well, it's weird that they made the China one was like, let's make this a hell, and the other ones were just like normal labyrinths
With a monster in
with
it,
yeah.
which would be devilish. Yeah, Chinese culture
just
is not
seemed
kind of the same
a
with
little
all
out
that.
of place.
It did, yeah. That to me did not feel like historically accurate or culturally
No,
accurate.
but we wanted to make it edgy.
Yeah, because now this is the last labyrinth, so this is like super dark labyrinth.
The evil labyrinth. Nobody knows about this one.
We had to erase this one because
we don't talk about the fourth labyrinth here.
No, but one of the things from the labyrinth, there was like flower motifs and also connected most of them too, which is why they knew they were connected. And that's where we get that in this one because we find out what the flowers are.
Yep, we find that out later because Olivia pulls a gun on Drake. Oh my god.
Stepmoms.
Says the hooded man killed Luca before she could do it. Olivia was the one who set fire to the apartment, and she was also the one who came after them in the van in New York. Well, she hired people to do that. It wasn't just her.
Yeah, she's in Egypt. She's like, I got an alibi.
She also screwed over Hendrickson because the mercenaries are loyal to her.
They're mercenaries. They're loyal to whoever pays them.
Yeah, so I guess she has a bunch of money, more than the CEO of a weapons manufacturing company, and she works for him. So
yeah,
figure that one out. Nate, Jada, and Hendrickson was about to be executed when the hooded men attack, giving them a chance to escape. They have great timing, the hooded men. Very perfect.
They literally come out of the shadow. Anywhere there's shadows, there's like a hooded man. Like
yeah,
there's like one entrance and exit, but these people find a way.
They must have another entrances somewhere.
They were like coming out of the walls, like from the ceilings,
come from the ceilings and stuff. There's creepy.
Was I mean, like spiders. I mean, like they're
everywhere. They'll probably be like animated like spiders. It's the game.
Oh,
but that's not 100%
that was the creepy
true
one
because later we'll
Uncharted
find out they're just dudes.
They're just dudes who climb walls like Spider-Man.
I mean, I guess you could climb walls, but when they're safe, they find out that the honey was some sort of drug used to brainwash people. So the hooded men are trying to protect the drug. Hendrickson wanted to sell the drug. Classic CEO.
Drugs and guns.
It also has the potential to turn people into like minotaur like monsters.
Oh yeah, if you take, I think it's like even after the first one, like it genetically changes you, and
so
that's part of the torture chamber too. Is she was giving these slaves the honey, and then they kind of figure out later on that it's to change them into these minotaur monsters because it like makes you produce
a brainwashed hit squad of minotaur deformed people, and that's why the skeletons are so large and weird.
Like super soldier serum.
Yeah, for the past.
And there are these flower, which is where the flower motifs come in. Is this special flower
that helps make that honey?
Yeah.
There's 5 hooded men that attack them once they figured this out, and Hendrickson shoots one of them, and then we see that it was Welsh.
Aww.
Welsh is here in China. They travel fast.
They do. Men. They're so fast, like in the shadows, and they must have a great travel plan because
I mean,
private jet.
Another...
Well, they were flying the plane that they took, so.
That's true. They know how to fly planes. You get that when you get brainwashed and turn into a minotaur monster. You now can fly planes. You can climb on walls. It's pretty amazing.
You can like throw knives. Like that was a thing.
Pretty impressive. The other hooded man goes to strangle Nate, and that one is Sully.
Which he like knocks his hood back, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's Victor Sullivan. He's so strong. Victor Sullivan, older man, so strong.
So Nate and Sully are like fighting, and they fall into a river, and Nate manages to get Sully in a chokehold and chokes him out, and then they get out of the river, and Jada goes to open the passage beneath the altar with the same puzzle, and you put the thing in the thing, and then it opens, and then an actual minotaur comes out, minotaur like dude, and like attacks them. from the altar. He's just hiding down there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you solve the puzzle, you have to now deal with this boss fight.
Mm-hmm.
And
So part of the part of why like Hendrickson and everyone wants these things is Daedalus got a lot of money and he died like a pauper or something like that. So everyone thinks that there's a whole bunch of gold hidden in one of the labyrinths.
yeah,
And so they're really there for the money, and then
Hendrickson's there for the drugs.
yeah,
Olivia's kind of there for the drugs and the money.
because they don't want Hendrix to have it.
Mm-hmm. Always about that treasure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, an actual quotes. Minotaur comes out of the hidden passage and attacks them. Olivia and the mercs show up. Sully woke up and he's fine now. It's okay. He just needed to be choked out, I guess. That's how you fix the brainwashed people. Is you
It's
choke
usually
them
like
out.
in the the water. I think was part of it.
Maybe.
Broke that trance.
The Minotaur then attacks Olivia and snaps her neck. I put in quotes because she's coming back. Jada, Scully, who's fine now, so I remember the scene. Nate and Hendrickson go and find the altar of the mistress of the labyrinth. So they found it.
The lady that gives the honey.
The lady that gives the honey. And then the actual mistress lady is there, and she straight up kills Hendrickson by slicing him open. Yeah, Olivia's still alive. There's like a bunch of treasure in the mistress's room, and she's like, goes full Abu on it, and is like, oh, treasure, and she gets greedy, and she sets off a trap, goes full Abu, and floods the place.
Goonies. It's always a trap. Don't touch that money.
Don't touch that money. So not only is the mistress of the labyrinth still here, but there's also another Minotaur in that room who's like older looking.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she sets off the trap, that Minotaur comes to life and drowns her in the water. So she's dead now. I promise
For
you.
real.
She's not coming back.
For real.
She's not coming back.
That she didn't get out of the drowning, so.
Yeah. And so they all have to leave the drowning chamber and they flee to safety. And then on their way, they burn all the flowers so that they can't make any more honey.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into the epilogue, where it all kind of happens really fast at the end.
Yeah, the end really does speed. It is very Uncharted, where it's like everything happens all at once.
Yeah, it's really.
And everything
Here
is
was my
explained all at
plan.
once. Considering that they don't really talk to each other, but they all knew what was happening.
Yeah,
Like there's some leaps of logic here that I was like, Victor reads something, but Nate already knows about it, and I'm like, you didn't talk to each other. Like that
They
was
talk to each other off screen,
off
book.
page apparently, because yeah, it was. I feel like there's something missing where one character found out, or one character was reading the journal, or one character saw the flower, but the other character knew about it, and that was
They're texting behind our bag. In the epilogue, they go to Luca's funeral, and Sully tells Nate about another job.
I feel like they've been gone for like an extraordinary amount of time.
Yeah.
Is it because they like his body is evidence that they couldn't bury him, or
I don't know, but Jada was worried about that because she was like, I don't know if I want to go to my dad's funeral before I go on this adventure with you guys. And they were like, don't worry, his funeral won't happen for a while, but they never explained why.
So part of that, well, and different cultures have different like burial rites. Like some need to be buried like right away, but then some I feel like Muslim country like culture, like you have to try to find as many of the pieces of the person as possible.
Maybe they tried to find him and it didn't work out. So I mean, maybe they did find his arms and legs. We don't know. They didn't tell us.
Mm-hmm.
But the funeral happened, and they were just on time to make it for the funeral. That's so great.
Mm-hmm. For her own father's funeral, yeah. Because Olivia's not around anymore, so who's planning the funeral?
I guess it has to be her, right? Or his colleagues. I don't know. He was kind of a rogue in the right. All of his colleagues are dead now.
So real life, someone has to plan your funeral. Like, and it's usually your next of kin.
Yep, so that happens. Sully tells Nate about another job, but there's no other book yet, so we don't know. We thought that maybe it was the first game, but it involves the Vatican.
Yeah, they're going to the Vatican. So there's it's not first, second, or third.
So that's a different book that never got written, or maybe it's about to be written. What the heck did I write in here? That's a little rude, Nate. Oh, he called the guy sumo sized. And I was like, rude.
Rude. But one of my favorite things to do in Uncharted is play as Donut Drake because he breaks everything and it makes sense that he is.
All right, I wrote a whole thing about I have one beef.
You just have one?
I mean, I can't. There's other beefs, but this one is important to me.
This was copyrighted in 2011, and 10 years later, there's still not a second book. So we're waiting, Christopher.
Yeah, Chris, come on. Make an audiobook this time, by the way. I marked you down points for no audiobook. What the heck? Anyway, that's not my beef right now. My real beef is, have you ever heard of the principle of Chekhov's gun? So, I've been saying this for a while about
Chekhov, like Chekhov. The Star Trek?
No, okay. This is a dude. I've been saying this a while about media. I used to just say, like, don't waste my time. But there's an actual fancy principle around this. And I just learned it recently. And I was like, that's what I say. Me and Chekhov, same page. It states, if in Act 1 you have a pistol hanging on the wall, then it must be fired in the last act.
Oh, you say this all the time about any movie.
In other words, don't draw audience's attention to something you're not going to bring up later. Or don't make false promises and don't waste my time. It's an actual principle in writing. And so, what was the deal with the opening of the book with the drug dealers and Alex, the girl who has cinnamon skin that he doesn't like?
And a pretty mouth.
And it was never brought up again. I thought, reading through it, I was like, they're going to go back.
It's like drug lords and like
they're going to go back.
Or not Chekhov. The Phoenix is the thing connected.
The staff might be important.
I think the moral of the beginning is that
you're just trying to set up Drake as like a cool guy.
Yeah, because he does things for money, but in reality he ends up doing what's right.
That was such a waste of my time though. Like,
it kind of was, but it is a very quick introduction of like, I'm a Tomb Raider.
I thought I'd have to remember this Alex girl and stuff later.
Females in Nathan Drake's life are there's only two main ones that stuck around.
It bothered me because it didn't show up ever again, and I was like, "What was the point?"
And it was another location.
Chris, what was the point?
I don't know. It's kind of weird to just start Nathan in New York because it's not a place.
No, he could be doing something else and maybe reminiscing or something. But
that's true.
I felt like it was gonna be important later, and then it wasn't, and then I was like, "Wow, what a waste of my time."
There is such a thing as too many locations.
Yep, I just thought that would come back. I was bummed. You made false promises.
Drug lords and Alex. Apparently he doesn't like cinnamon skin.
Yeah, what the heck?
Or cinnamon on your toast. Does that mean you don't like Cinnamon Toast Crunch?
What the heck, Nate? I don't know if we can be friends. So how many stars did you give it? On Goodreads.
So on Goodreads, for those of you who don't know, Goodreads is a book log. Basically, if you give it 1 star, it means your book sucked. And then other than that, it was just okay or you liked it. I the same thing I said before is I think a little Uncharted is better than no Uncharted. I missed the banter between Sully and Nate because that is super enjoyable. And they're both funny guys.
Yeah.
And that was kind of missing.
I didn't
it got
like
super serious, like in a lot of parts.
Nate and Jada.
No, Jada was a little too intense.
Well, they were
Nadine is intense too, but she's funny.
She is funny, and Jada.
We heart Laura Bailey. Let's be honest.
They were like, "Wow, she can really banter with me," says Nate, and I'm like, "Not really. She's kind of dropping the ball in this banter."
She's a little too intense, where it needs to be more playful. So I mean, I liked it, but I think it was missing some points. How many stars?
Do you remember?
I think I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 2. I said it was okay.
Yeah, I liked it, so I gave it a 3. But
it moves fast, which is nice. But yeah, I felt like a lot of it wasted my time, and there's no audiobook, Chris. What the heck?
I don't know if that's Chris's fault. That's more of a...
How about you read it, Chris?
Naughty Dog and PlayStation Publishing, because they're the ones that would do an audiobook version of
Shame.
it.
You should be more like Ubisoft and have all your books be audiobooks too. I'm pretty sure.
Especially since Naughty Dog is so big on like adaptability and like
Well, now they are.
yeah, maybe we should go backwards and make it easier for people to have access to.
Yeah.
And please have either Nathan Fillion, since everyone really wanted him to be Nathan Drake. Like he could be Nathan Drake in the audiobook. That would be fantastic.
He could make it a drama.
Yeah.
With like sound effects and stuff.
So he could finally do. I mean, I love Nolan North, like he is Nathan Drake, but I feel like Nathan Fillion lost out.
What if Tom Holland read the book?
I could see that too, but I'd like to hear his Victor Sullivan.
That would be funny. That would be really good.
So what is next for us?
Next is the book called The Infernal City. It is the first of the Elder Scrolls novels. It takes place right after the Oblivion game. And I'm excited because
so it's interesting. So we started with sci-fi, right? Mm-hmm. And then this is action adventure, and then we're going into fantasy.
Yep. We're jumping around,
hitting a little bit. Obviously, big franchises for games, but jumping around in the genres.
Probably good to keep our attention. We don't want to just like keep going with like all the Mass Effect books in a row and stuff like that.
Give you a little bit of flavor.
We will see you next month.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.